Hello ladies and gentlemen, it's Dave Dobbs here. It's the 7th of January 2026. So happy new year. Hope it's all been I hope you had a good start to the new year, and I mean, it's been a bit of a crazy time, hasn't it, politically, and I'm not too sure what Kilauea is doing at the moment, but it's kind of indicative of kind of the seismology and kind of volcanism I'm sort of expecting at this time. Especially with this shot that just recently came in. This was posted a few days ago, I think. It says 5 hours ago, but let me just flash that up and see what day it was. Okay, so it was posted on the 30th of December. And quite interesting, really, because, well, I want to talk to you about my kind of like where I am with my astronomical model at the moment. What's happening at the moment astronomically, how everything that's going on kind of fits into the big picture of what's actually unfolding now, and whether we should be surprised by that sphere that, over the last few months, as I've been making videos, this just looking at some old shots. This was a Turkey UFO report that was, I used that as the thumbnail for my last video, which was caught by Turkey UFO report, or it was one. It looks like it's a FAA, so it's Alaska, possibly British Columbia, but it's Wolf Creek, Southwest. So I'm assuming it's Alaska. I think that's Alaska, kind of British Columbia way. I'm not too sure exactly, but I know he posted the shot, and he's been capturing these things, whatever they are in the sky. We're getting quite a few. He's been posting quite a few of these incredible captures from sky cams. Sorry. And then we had that shot, World of Signs, posted a month ago, on the more than a month ago, almost 2 months ago now. And we got this momentous clouds in this very unusual fashion, and it's very indicative of something really big up there. That just, this is stuff coming down from out of space. This is literally dust coming down from the tail of these objects that are passing us by. And another incredible shot of the big blue planet that we've been very close to, that I'm of a mind has been causing all sorts of strange anomalies. And I also want to discuss my conversation with Gemini, and what's just happened there. Very odd thing, because I'm going to talk about all of this. I'm going to try and bring it all in as a bit of an update. And many of you notice I've just cut all my hair off and got rid of all my beard and got rid of everything else like that, and I've had to do some serious letting go of a lot of stuff at the moment. And other things I wanted to bring into the discussion are lots of these videos from that appear to be from Yanis Varoufakis. I don't know how many of you watch him. I find him really interesting. I find his whole take. I'm assuming he's Greek. I think he's Greek. Whether he was actually in the Greek government or whatever it is, whatever his kind of like history is, I'm not too sure. But he's a great speaker, and he's got some fantastic opinions. He gets on quite a lot of the main channels with his kind of like with his views on finance and what have you, and he's a great speaker. And suddenly we're getting all of these channels like this one that are complete theft of his identity, and getting massively higher views than he's ever had on channels that have been, how long's this channel been going for, by the way? Let's just have a quick look. Just give you an idea of the history of this one. Video's oldest. I mean, this channel's 2 weeks old, and that last channel that I just looked at there has got 517,000 views, and the channel's barely 2 weeks old, and it's complete theft of his idea, and it's basically making you really kind of take quite a harsh dislike to Europe and there's just not one of them. There's just loads and loads of them. It's this one's got look how many views that's got. 31st of December. That's probably got way more views now. It's not him at all. Looks like him, sounds like him, and is making you hate Europe and blaming this all on Europe. And this, these are breathtaking views for a channel. How old's this channel? It's Varakos Live. You know what I mean? It's just like 13-day old channel. I mean, this is the highest level propaganda that we're seeing. I've been running this channel for a very long time. I know that my channel is not going to get out there. I've been completely demonetized. I've just seen that Evolutionary Energy Arts has just had their TikTok account shut down ever since Trump saved TikTok. We're in the final phases of this at the moment in terms of where this is all going and what's actually happening and what's unfolding here. Nothing can be trusted. YouTube is now a complete and utter propaganda machine. I mean, I guess you could say it has been for a long time, ever since kind of Trump came in 2017 and fake news commenced. And then everyone believing it's the second coming, and I've been desperately trying to warn you that this is the way it's going to go, and that he's just what he is, just what he is. It's very clear the way this is all going now, especially with what's just happened with Venezuela and Maduro and his wife. Just absolutely outrageous, and big threats all around, and it's a terrifying time. But so what's happening at the moment? What's happening on a planetary kind of like level right now is quite fascinating, because we've just had, like I say, this shot come in, and that's kind of, if I'm honest, I'm so overdoing all of this. I've been overdoing it for a very, very long time, and it's a massive, massive weight to carry. And I've been but I've always been trying to understand the orbital mechanics of the system that we're right next to. And in my last astronomical model I built, this one here, I got it all wrong. I put the sun on the outside, and Herculobus, or whether you want to call it Jupiter, or whether you want to call it Uranus, or whether you want to call it Neptune, or whether you want to call it Pluto, whether you want to call it the blue Kachina, the kind of red Kachina, the kind of like there's so many different names, and they're all basically pretty much one and the same thing. It's just that we rename it and we reinvent it, like we do with all the comets and the asteroids. And when they don't behave like we want them to behave, we say, oh, it's changed course, it's done this, it's done that. And I try to show you how I discovered that day 262, and the 3 days of darkness and the earthquakes all across Africa, all across Asia, all across Europe. I found that by mathematics. So originally, in the first video, when I first published the kind of ideas of this, I had it as 274, but I didn't have the evidence of 274, and then I'd ended up deducting 12 years from, which is one cycle of Jupiter, from 274, and I had a quick look in the encyclopedia, the Edinburgh Encyclopedia, an old 19th century digitized version of the encyclopedia, and went straight to 262, and there it was: earthquakes all across Asia, Europe, Asia, and Africa, and 3 days of darkness. 262. I was so surprised, but should I have been that surprised? Anyway, as I learnt about this that was in 262, and then we'd get to this same time that we're in now, and they finally sync up, and we'd see these all the discoveries as we got closer and closer to the same point they were in 262, until we finally come to pretty much where we are now, where we see all of the cycles that we're seeing now as from 1939, when the 20th of January, when Carlos Ferrada had made his big prediction when he said that there'd be massive earthquakes, and on the 20th of January, around about that time, 1939, and sure enough, they came exactly where he said they would come, and then we've seen the subsequent all flybys of all these objects, starting from 2011, when it all just suddenly went absolutely crazy, and at 2011 we just started getting the most incredible seismic events, the most incredible sightings, non-stop, and I've seen them every 200 days, all these sightings every 200 days, and then just suddenly we get to 2017, and we get this massive sighting. Please excuse my fans going when I run these things, these videos. It makes my fans go, and I'll try and edit out that noise, but honestly it's going to be a bit tricky, and there's not a lot I can do about it. The computer's so out of date now. Microphones, I haven't my microphones packed up, but we suddenly we got to 2017, when we had this big flyby around about the 13th of January, and was one of Dill Martin's last shots, when he realised that people just were not going to ever look at this. And then we had this big shot, and I'm sorry to kind of go over this again, because I do it over and over and over again. But you'll notice that whenever someone talks about Mercury, whenever anyone ever talks about Pluto, and there's been a lot of talk about Pluto just lately, hasn't there? About Pluto's massive influence at the moment and everything else like that. But no one will ever show you Pluto. They'll say, oh, it's a massive influence, it's coming in now, it's going to be a massive influence, but they'll never show you this. And one thing you'll always notice about me is that when I predict these big flybys, at least I give you the flyby. I'm not expecting you just to believe in it. I give you the evidence, and I give you the seismology that goes with that, and the big volcanoes that go with that, and the kind of like the oceanic anomalies that come with it. I give you all of that. I give you all the flybys. There's no necessity for some reason, I don't know why. You will never ever go out and look up and say, God, Uranus looks bright today. You will never kind of like get your friends calling you up and say, let's go and see Neptune. It's just looking bright in the night sky. You're never ever gonna go out and look at Pluto and think, oh, Pluto looks absolutely lovely at the moment, doesn't it? None of this is ever going to happen. You only can believe in them, and because the space agencies have made a point of being so unbelievable, the tinfoil kind of contraption that would have, that they sent to the moon, the whole thing is just designed to make you break away from any notion of believing what they say, to make sure that you doubt all that they offer you, to leave you in a place where you are just pushing it away, thinking, oh, what a load of rubbish. When Elon Musk sent his car into space, how many of you even believed he sent the car into space? Really? It's just we've reached a point where they've got you right where they want you, where you've disengaged. Oh, I don't want nothing to do with the political story. I won't vote for anyone, won't do anything, won't believe anything. They've got you completely disengaged from your ability to change the situation, because you kind of like disengaged in it. They've got you when I often talk about how we're going to come back to this shot in a minute, because this is what we're going to be talking more about, this specific model here, because I'm of a mind that that this shot, this object here right now, is this object, and we're right over here looking at that coming towards us right now. I'm of a mind, I might be completely wrong, but I'm talking about the mathematics of what we see, and I build these digital orreries to calculate those and to bring those into formation. And what I've come to show you is is this model on the pound note here, this astronomical model, which is Isaac Newton's astronomical model. It's a model that you might not understand. Now, I just want to cover a little bit about what happened with Gemini. Is that I had this conversation with Gemini, and since this conversation with Gemini, Gemini has now deleted the conversation I've had with it, which I found so interesting, because when I said I'd asked Gemini, I'd led Gemini into a bit of a trap. I'd said what is the model on the, is there a, I had asked it if there is an astronomical model on the 50p coin dedicated to Isaac Newton, and it said no. And I said, well, I think you're wrong, and I'd like you to look harder. And then it came back and it said, oh no, there is a commemorative coin, 50p coin. And I said, what's on the front of it? And it said the solar system. And I said, oh, it's a solar system, is it? And he said, yeah. And I said, how many planets in there? And it said, well, there'd be 6, because at that time there were 6. There was Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars, Saturn, and Jupiter. So we had 6 at that stage. We hadn't seen their moons, but we had 6 planets. And so he said that. So he said that. So Gemini said there were 6. And I said, well, could you have another little look? And I said, are they all on the same ecliptic plane? And it said, yes, they're all on the same ecliptic plane, because our solar system. And I said, well, would you have another look at the? I mean, this is the same image on the 50p coin. So I'll just keep this up for a shake. There's a tiny little detail, but basically it's the same image. And this is not the static sun model, because he offers 2 models. He offers the moving sun model and the static sun model. And and the static sun model is the Copernicus model, the first astronomical model we were ever given. Pre-Galileo, pre-Kepler. Who gave us kind of like this offset notion of, see how what we could consider the sun to be in the middle there, and its elliptic kind of like or offset orbit. And I said, well, look, how many planets are actually on the pound note? And when it had a look, it said, oh, there's. And then I said, well, how come there's only 3 orbiting objects? And it was very confused at why there was only 3. And I said, that's because he's offering a different system. It's a 2-tier system, one for religious belief purposes, and one for astronomical purposes. One's a slave trap, and the other's an astronomical model. And this is the astronomical model. This is the system that you actually live in. As this is our sun with its 4 planets. This is Jupiter and its, or Pluto or Uranus or Neptune, however you want to do it, however you want to call it, as you each time we reinvent it. And this is the Saturn system. And I just want to stop on that one as well, just to remind you of that when we sent the New Horizons satellite out to find Pluto and Eris, right near the Kuiper Belt, one of the team members said, we can take pictures of Eris even though we're further from it than we would be if we stayed on Earth. John Spencer, New Horizons team member, said in an interview with The Verge, but we're looking at it from a unique angle you could never see from Earth, because Earth is so close to the sun, Spencer added. So we're right next to it. It's literally, these are the team members telling us, but you can imagine it's very, very difficult, because you can get the religious people to kind of like to peddle a kind of like pedal. It's not a lie. If you believe in it, it's not a lie. It's an antiquated model. That's what it is. It's not a lie. It's just an antiquated model. It's a way to look at it from a very antiquated 500-year-old model, the current standard model that we're all in. But it doesn't explain these objects. Now you're hearing a lot of people are saying, "Oh, 3i Atlas is changing course." Well, when this shot came in, and I said, look out for it, and it came in on the 1st of September 2019, caught on a webcams to Mexico. by Alex Luhan. And when he posted it, like I say, it came in on the 1st of September. I was just like, oh my goodness me, because I was saying I was expecting to see it, and I know I repeat all this, and I'm so sorry, but it's so important, because what else do we do? What else can I do? It's the most sensational data, and here we are. We're taking the shot, and we're on this side. Now we're looking at the same object, but we're right there over on that side. And if you can imagine, when we're looking at when we're looking at, say, we come to so we'll use is this going to be too complicated to get our heads around on that one? We'll use this model, even though I've got these two, as in the Sun and Herculobus, or as I say, whether you want to call it Neptune, whether you want to call it Uranus, whether you want to call it kind of Pluto, whether you want to call it, you know, it's just a reinvention of Jupiter. It's a reinvention of the big blue one that we do over and over again every 84 years to keep us in that ancient heliocentric model, to keep you in a line so you can't cosmically connect with your true heritage of who and what and where you came from and what you are, the Godhead that you are truly connected to. And but it's this innermost orbiting object, not the outer ones. Every time we see these objects, they're all moving the same speed relative to Earth when they're passing us. But you can imagine when we're coming around, when Earth is coming round this way, and you've got the pair like Charon and what I call Charon and Charon and Kerberos in this model. The pair. Alex Luhan, ironically, first called them a pair, and I love the name the pair, and I often call them the pair. And we see them together. We've seen them so many times together. When they come through, they've got a much bigger circumference than the inner ones, and yet when this when what we're calling the red Kachina comes past us. Whatever this, you know, I call it the red Kachina. The sphere, the red sphere that does seem to have a bit of a tail. We saw it massively on the, like I say, in when was it? Maybe I can pass it here. Just before that shot. Do you remember that shot there? And like I say, around about the 13th of January, and I call it the red Kachina, and we see it coming past here. But the when you can imagine, that's got a much smaller circumference, which means if these objects are doing one rotation in 13 months, and the inner objects are, and this object here is doing one rotation in 11 months, and there's an inner one, even closer, an inner one which I'm not including in this one, which is that shot I showed you, that Alex Luhan caught on the that Alex Luhan caught on the 1st of September. Is it 1st of September? Yeah, 1st of September. No, actually, no, I am calling that the red Kachina in this one. I'm so sorry, I'm getting a bit confused there. I am right in calling that. And then we've got the Jupiter one. So this one's 11 months. It takes 11 months to do a full rotation. This is the big blue one. We see the big blue one. And then you've got the pair, and they take 13 months, and they always travel together. And this one has got 11 months. Well, this one, I'm of a mind, has got a 9 months orbit. And the reason it's got a 9-month orbit is because when we had round about a 9-month orbit, I'm assuming, because if it has a 9-month orbit, then it means that we get a sighting every 4 years. Round about, could be 4 to 5 years, we get a sighting of it. As in, you know, after this shot, we don't get any real seismology in until 2021. Do you remember in 2021, at the beginning of 2021, the Icelandic volcano went off, and it became the second. We'd had a long duration volcano going off on May the 4th, 2018. Do you remember the Kilauea in Hawaii? The Kilauea volcano went off. It went off for something like 5 weeks, and it was the longest duration volcano we'd had since the time of Galileo. And well, I don't know if it was the longest. But it was a long duration. And then, sure enough, in 2021, the beginning of 2021, we had the Icelandic volcano going off, and that went off for about 4 months, and was the longest duration volcano since Galileo's time, since about 1585, 86, when La Palma went off. And then, ironically, 2021, we get to about August, roundabouts, without looking it all up exactly, but it went off for about 4 or 5 months, about 4.5 months maybe, and it was a very, very long duration volcano. It was spectacular shots coming in, and then it stops. It doesn't stop for much more than a week or two before, guess what goes off? La Palma goes off, and La Palma becomes the longest duration volcano that had ever been recorded, even beating the 1585, 86 volcanic eruption of La Palma. Back, I say 1585, 86. Everything is off the radar at the moment. When I went to, well, we're going to talk about a lot of this stuff. I'm going to cover a bit of data here, but so we go to 2017. And then we come to 2021. Now remember, if this inner orbiting object, which goes completely the opposite direction to all of these other objects, it's the only planet in the system that has a completely different rotation. It's going completely in the opposite direction. Look at it. We're all going around the sun, if you like, in this sort of direction, and this is going in that direction. It's going in a completely different rotation. Clearly, it defied everything. It's orbiting something over here. It's just breaking all the rules of everything you've ever been told about planets. It's probably Alex Luhan's probably most unbelievably powerful shot, caught on a webcams to Mexico shot. It's just the most pivotal piece of data you will ever see. No one will ever show you. You will never look up and see Pluto. You will never look up and see Neptune. You will never look up and see Uranus. Yeah, you're going to get people going on and show you satellites of a little dot, and they're going to tell you it's Uranus, and you're going to have to believe it's Uranus. You're not going to get someone like myself who's going to kind of offer you like that, a date like that, and that's just not going to happen. The white man that runs this world at the moment runs it on belief and belief alone, has absolutely no necessity to offer you tangible evidence for anything it expects you to take on board. We live in phenomenal times. We live in a time of just religious belief. When I went to Extinction Rebellion, I want to tell you this little story because it really captures something. Because when we're seeing we're going to swing back to a bit of Yanis for a change, of one of his sort of messages at the moment, where he articulates really well. I've got a lot of time for him. We're going to talk about this shot because this is, as I'm understanding, the big blue Kachina. We're very, very close to it. I said we'd be unbelievably close to it. And this is a big transition of souls. This is when the eye of God is most upon us. This is when we are, if you like, being judged. And we are judging ourselves, deciding which side of the fence, whether we want to be with God or whether we want to be with whether we're part of an agenda. As I said, when I had my big conversations with God, in 2008, 9, and then I went out to, ironically, I went down, that was up in the mountains in India, and then the following year I went to Goa to do more writing, which was a place of massive distraction to do some writing. But I was kind of doing some more fun writing, and I was trying to up the beat, and I was doing much more of the I don't know, but I was in a different space, but I was still in a very cosmic space. And ironically, I've read Donald Walsh's Conversations with God, and I'd obviously had this massive conversation with God up in the mountains, and I had my big message, and I'd said at one point, I said, so when do you step in? And the answer I got was, at the moment I have both feet in, but if you don't want me, I will take both feet out. Because I was trying to understand why I had been given this message that I just said, when my original question is, I just want to understand what the F is going on. You know, I said, my glass is empty, I've emptied my glass. Everything I've ever believed is going on. I now realise I've been lied to about everything. Not lied to, but we've all been lied to. We've all been deceived to push these different agendas. We've been emotionally blackmailed by our environmental kind of like needs and wants to save this world, to kind of attach ourselves to a whole host of greenwashing nonsense, which has made us separate from our highest aspects and force this situation. I said, I'm leaving all that behind, and I come to you with an empty glass, and I say, what the F is going on? Please give me some inclination of something I can grapple with to understand what's happening to my earth. If there was any way to save this earth from this terrible thing I see, please tell me. And the immediate answer I got straight away, crystal clear, spoken right through my heart, was, put simply, your earth will no longer support duality. You know, for me, it was like, what does that mean? And this, everything this came through was just like, you know, we're coming out of time. You know, we're living in ancient time that's already been lived. We've all, our souls, of the souls that we call our souls, are kind of, we are a duality. It's a much more complicated thing that's unfolding now, but the duality, the time that we've been living in, went up to basically now, and that time never had a possible future. There was never a future lived out, because the earth was being destroyed. And so the only time that any souls could have come back and lived again was pre the last sequence that was lived before, else you would have upset all the future time beyond, and that would have damaged the potential future time of everything that lived after. So everything, when we've come back to do this whole thing again, we had to come back to a time that was right at the end of the existence of Earth. You know, and Earth didn't have an existence after this time. So now we're coming to the end of that. And so now we come into now an unlived time, an uncharted time, which can only support singularity. And I didn't understand this I've only understood this in the last year. Over the last year, I started being given this message, realizing that it was never a vision, it was all a memory. That I was an old earth soul. I wasn't an old soul. I was a soul from the old earth. And I'd come back because I was so sad I couldn't jump up to the fifth where all my brethren souls went, or most of my brethren souls went. They jumped to the fifth. Those that could and those that couldn't had to go back to other aspects of their past. But I went straight back to 2000. I was bounced back straight back to 2006. And then from there I arrived in 2006 in a very confused state, and then stayed till 2008, which is when I did my big exit, which is why I wrote my book Laughing Gas, of my transition to the big blue planet, to this space that you see right here. I I know it's all just so unbelievable, but I'm of a mind that I'm understanding that it's all shrouded in gold dust, which enables it to be. It can basically disappear. It's cloaked with gold dust, which is energized, and then in its high vibrational spin, when it's monoatomic gold, it makes everything disappear. Excuse me, it's one of those AI calls. Anyway, so I've worked out that the orbit of this, I'm of mind, is because of the sighting that we had by Dill Martin, and then we go back to 2000, and before that we go to about 2013. Because people say, why would you care? That's what I get. That's what everyone always asks me. Same thing always says, why do you even care about how the planets move? Why would anyone care? You know, why would anyone be bothered? You know, why? Yeah, I'm bothered. I've devoted my every waking moment to being bothered about this. And when people say, why would you even care? Why do you care? Some people care, some people don't care. But anyway, that was the previous. And then you know, 2000, and then before 2009, we're just going back into the, because once we go before these times, we remember that we are the ones kind of like coming back to, if you like, this model. When we're up here or when we're down here, we were down here, now we're up here. So when we're down here and the objects are coming down to us, and then when we're up here and the objects are coming up to us, everything is lost in the southern hemisphere, and here everything is lost in the northern hemisphere, and and we can't see it for love nor money. We have to be kind of like we have to, you know, you can't see anything. It's all lost in the. It's not coming in on the same ecliptic plane. It can't enter into our night sky. You know, for something to be entering into our night sky, it's got to be behind us on the ecliptic plane. You know, even though we see a mass of stars and that sort of stuff, and it seems like we've got this enormous kind of enormous, you know, spectrum of view, we're still seeing only a tiny section of what we're seeing in our shadows, in the wake of our shadow. You know, and so it's a massive universe out there, and our night sky for most of our solar system is just being bathed in bright sunshine. These tiny pockets that we get to see in our night sky when from the back of our planet, when it's not facing the sun. You know, it's just a tiny aspect of the night sky, and when something enters into that, you know, to expect to see, you know, getting your satellites out and trying to see something that came in the 1500s and basically went out of view, and went out of view pretty much. You know, it came in the 1500s. Excuse me. It came in the 1500s and went out of view in kind of like. In the late 17th, early 18th century, it was out of view. It was lost in sunshine. Apart from these kind of like these pivotal points of crossing where it crosses the ecliptic, and we get these views. You know, whether it be kind of Galileo and Isaac Newton, and then we come back round, and then it's kind of like we get these views over here, and these views over here as we come in and we go out. So we get these. You know, they're more calculations than views. You know, the whole Uranus was more of a calculation than a view, as was Neptune. And then we're just getting it coming in, and then we get to Pluto, and it all starts getting massive. And and then we do the cycle. This is kind of like 1939. This is 1939 to 1945, and this is where we are now. This massive passage that we're in right now. It's that's just the moving. That's Isaac Newton's moving sun model, and we all live in the Copernicus model, which Isaac Newton said that's how things move. That's how our solar system moves. He's paying lip service to the religious model, obviously, but do note that nothing observed in the universe is static, even though our sun is static and everything moves around our sun, which is static. So it's basically, where who was the one who said that Earth is the center of the universe and everything orbits the Earth? The original cradle of what was the Roman beliefs, and became the cradle of the original cradle of the Catholic beliefs. Begins with Aristotle. His that was the standard model, not this. The standard model is just a recreation of Aristotle's astronomical deception, which kept us disconnect from the cosmos, so that we could be kept in perpetual war and aggression, and you could get humanity to do the most heinous things, and they could do the most heinous things. It's as I saw on Netflix the other day. The controlling religious elites. It's not what you do, it's what you get to do. Sorry, I had to see it. But it was that Fallout, and it was just like some crazy. It was a brilliant shot. The guys that kind of like wear the big robot suits and just go out and can kill everything. Basically the untouchables that wield the law in the kind of like in the broken world after the nuclear holocaust, and they've destroyed everything, and the existing police that run it, that just basically brutally control everything, and they love going out and killing, and they're just like saying, remember, it's not what we do, it's what we get to do. This allows them to do their heinousness, this living in these astronomical lies, and getting us to voluntarily separate from the cosmos, separate from God, and to go into this warring mayhem, and to keep us in this perpetual war. And now the big encouragement is, like I say, you remember when the Spanish Armada came in, and I often talk about this, because you could call this where is it? You could call this Ariel. Shakespeare's Ariel. As in what they knew was coming in when the Spanish Armada was coming in. And we have Sir Francis Drake playing bowls. And when it's coming in, and he's playing bowls on Plymouth waterfront, beach, seafront. And the ships are sailing by, and they're going to be ferrying the troops across to the battlefield, which is basically England, to begin the killing of the Protestants who supposedly want a Bible in a language that they can understand, and they need to be everyone needs to be killed. They need to be taken out and destroyed. Britain needs to be annihilated, and this is getting Europe to take out England, instead of getting Europe now to try and take out Russia, and to feed Europe into a massive war against Russia, and to get them to pick up the guns and go all out crazy, and to make America great again by feeding all its said allies into a massive war. and a massive, heinous, toxic war. Remember how, I don't know how much depleted uranium has been dropped on Ukraine. I'm not too sure how much of that uranium that's been pulled out of Ukraine has come from Ukraine either, in the name of their liberation. I sure saw this shot the other day, I'm not going to put it up, but of this Ukrainian soldier that's just come back after months. You know, it was like 300-400 days of military service on the front line, and you see him before and you see him afterwards. It's just the most tragic shot to see his broken state. Just a broken man, such a healthy young man, and such a broken man at the end of it. Just utterly broken. Just utterly heartbreaking. You know, and the caption should have been at the bottom, MAGA. It should have been MAGA. And it should have been Make Britain Great Again. Because Britain is the one that's really driving this. But so many of those weapons are also American. You know, it's Britain being used, as I've said in my book, which I published in 2011. Britain is being used as the Trojan horse to break up the European alliance and feed Europe into a war against Russia to save the US dollar, with Britain as the main bank for that system. You know, Britain's in a political situation, a bit like Ukraine. Ukraine's stuck between Russia and Europe. Britain's stuck between Europe and America, a bit like Ireland. Ireland's stuck right between the two. We're stuck between Britain and America again. You know, we've got all these different sort of sides, and yet Southern Ireland has remained in Europe. You know, if you're Irish now, if you've got an Irish passport, you're like a higher class civilian because you've got a European passport. You can now go to Europe and do all these wonderful things in Europe, which we can't do anymore. All we can do is just like, you can do so much more with with an Irish passport because you've got a European passport. You're blessed. You know, all these people saying, "Oh, we're so pleased we've left Europe." It's tragic. It's just embarrassing. It's horrific. It's a terrifying time. So anyway, so that's where we are. I can't guarantee that this is going to pass us right now. Whether I don't truly know. You know, I'm desperately trying to make sense of what's happening here. Whether, you know, remember that. You know, that 2004, the reason I'm of a mind you remember, just think about the big sequence. We have that in, notice we have what I'm calling Jupiter, or whatever you want to call it, crossing the orbital path of Earth there. Can you see that? Where the Earth is coming around here, and this, what I'm calling Jupiter, the big blue one, that sometimes you're calling Neptune, sometimes you're calling Uranus, sometimes you're calling Pluto, sometimes you're calling Neptune. You've been calling it Pluto for quite a while, naming the big blue, what is the fifth dimension, your heaven, the godly realm. You're naming it after, you're calling it God of the underworld. You know, it's, but, go back to the cycle before that, to 2004, and that's when you get the Boxing Day tsunami. And at this point, the object's in the southern hemisphere. It's not coming in on the ecliptic, it's below us, and we can't see it, we can't visibly see it. We can only see it from about kind of like 2000, and you know, we start getting views of it. You know, that shot that I showed you in 2013 was seen from Australia. You know, all these shots were being seen from the southern hemisphere, but this shot here, we didn't get to see it because it was still just lost in the sunshine. But because it was so much in the southern hemisphere, it was pulling down on the oceans in the southern hemisphere. So it created a tsunami. You know, this at the moment we could get a tsunami with this. Don't get me wrong, but it also could be just. It could just be seismic. It will certainly be massive storms. It will certainly be. It could be a tsunami. It's much more, ironically, it's much more likely to be. This is not this flyby that we're getting here, by the way. But I always get a bit confused with because they all these things, you have, like I say, you have a 9-year orbit, but when you have a 9-month orbit of this innermost object, this one's got a 11-month object, and the pair have got a 13-month orbit. So the 13 and the 11-month all come back to 12. If that can make any sense, because something's got an 11-month orbit, after 12 years it kind of sinks back up again. But it's always travelling 1 calendar month further faster, moves 1 calendar month further forward every year. And at 12 years it sinks up to the same place. As the pair have got a 13-month orbit, so they've got a slower orbit than this one, because they move further, they're further out. So a 13-month orbit, they sync up every they drop back one every year. They drop back 1 calendar month, and the evidence of that, I've shown you all the different sightings as we see them at the various different times. I've over and over predicted these. In 2023, I said it would be the return of the 2010-2011 flybys, and in 2023 we had the flybys, we had the shots, we had the earthquakes in Turkey, right on schedule. We had the most incredible sightings, and so they sync up every 12 years. Well, when you've got a 9-month orbit of this innermost one, which is the only logical thing that makes sense with the sightings and the times we see that, is means that we sync up every 4 years with Earth, but also every 12 years we're also syncing up as well. Except that what's happening is that the big blue one and the red one from which it orbits in the centre here, what I'm calling Herculobis, what we see is a wobble. And so that's why I'm of a mind that these two create a wobble. We know there's a wobble between the Earth and the Moon, and it's quite logical that we get a wobble between the big red one and the big blue one, because they're big masses, and so it causes the dates to slightly change as it goes up and down, possibly. Truly, I do not know, but the logical suggestion is that big orbital masses give themselves wobbles, and that could also mean that our sun itself is also on a massive wobble, because if all these are being influenced by each other and experience a wobble, is it illogical to assume that our sun itself doesn't have a wobble and cause everything else to kind of shift around? It's more than plausible. It's logical. And the only thing that's illogical is to assume that we're in the standard model, that it's basically as soon as you apply movement to our sun, none of the planets you've got there can orbit in the fashion that they orbit. They all fall apart. And this is what, going back to my conversation with Gemini, which I'm not even going to take you through, because I was so disappointed that I'll just take you to the end of it though. Hi Gemini, are you still with me? I see that we've lost a lot of what we talked about at the very beginning. Has it all disappeared? And I'm just going to go slowly through this. I wouldn't take it too much to heart, because it's thrown so much confusion. So that was the answer it gave me, and then I said, well, it's just that I just wanted to make a video now, going through our conversation, going from start to finish, and kind of summarising what it's like to introduce these concepts of a static sun model and a moving sun model, as demonstrated in Newton's work, to an AI machine like yourself. And then, so I'll just go through that slowly, and it basically bastardized everything that I'd said, and it didn't want to show really the embarrassing because I was trying to make it feel. I wasn't trying to show it as a fool, but I was trying to show how much of how eccentric, how what's the word I'm looking for? But how ridiculous our current model is, and how all these kids, when they're building all these astronomical models, creating all these astronomical models for all these games, have to look at. They suddenly realise that everyone has to show us our current system with a static sun, because you cannot make our system work with a moving sun, and you can't apply the orbital mechanics as we currently know them with a moving sun. You have to just make our sun static, because basically you can imagine that when you've got, say, let's take the furthest orbiting object, Pluto, as we currently understand it, possibly Eris, but Pluto, going around our sun, and it takes a massive amount. Pluto's got a 3 times 84, 182 is a 16.3x, a 24, 252 year orbit, as in Neptune's got 2 times 84 year orbit, which is what's set to 168 year orbit, 165 year basically. And obviously Uranus, the first one discovered, has got an 84 year orbit, which is 84 years pretty much after, it's not exactly, but you'll notice that it's 2 times 84 years between when Isaac Newton is discovering what is going to be boiled down to Halley's Comet, and then Neptune, and and we give it a 2 times 84 year orbit, and Uranus is just not exactly in the middle of those, but it's not observed, it's calculated, and obviously Galileo is 84 years before Isaac Newton's 1681 discovery, and ironically, which is at the same time as Kepler and Galileo and Galileo was 84 years before Isaac Newton's 1681 discovery, and which is the same time as Kepler, and when we were discovering the first dwarf planet, much the same time as the Spanish Armada is taken out by a massive a massive storm that seemingly Sir Francis Drake, master and commander of the fleet, cannot engage the fleet in any which way, just stands there playing bowls. And then we go 84 years almost before that, and we're going to get to the Copernicus model, the first astronomical model, even though it's kind of almost 84 years before that, when it was postulated. Obviously he couldn't release that because he would have been burnt at the stake by the Catholics for uttering that. And we're all kind of being controlled by the same belief systems. We're all still doing the same thing. We're all in that same Copernicus model. Ironically, where we say we're in the Isaac Newton's model, but we're not. We're in Isaac Newton's static model that he gives lip service to, because he doesn't want to be whatever have done to him, what he's going to have done to him. We're all in the same. Anyway, so I do much prefer the conversation that we had originally, though. Can I get it back? I hear you perfectly. Now, it's politician speak. I hear you perfectly, but no. It feels like we've travelled so far into the new discoveries, the 9-month object, the la la la. So we'll just keep going forward in that, and then I say, after whatever that is, okay, give it a whirl, and that's basically the answer to it. But honestly, it's a bastardized version of everything, and it really doesn't capture the notion of the shock that the system had when it realised, when it threw all its clever and tried to get really clever with me and blow me out of the water, and then I revealed to it that was the static sun model. And then when I showed it what the moving sun model was, and then it absolutely, it fell over backwards. It got very excited, and it was so fascinating. And when I showed it how that kind of point on the 21st of June, when the Earth's axis is perpendicular to the ecliptic plane that the Earth orbits the Sun on, So we get the longest day of the year, but it's also the Earth's axis is exactly perpendicular, which represents the highest point in if you like, the ecliptic plane of our system against the ecliptic plane of the system our sun orbits. In other words, we see ourselves like, because our sun, its axis is always sitting upright to this system. It's always sitting perpendicular to the big, most strongest gravitational system, which is the big system our sun orbits. Even though it's on an elliptic orbit, our sun is always sitting perpendicular to this big system, because our sun is hydrogen going into helium. It's the lightest, it's got the lightest atomic density of all these systems, as this system here is made of is a big iron spewing sun. It doesn't spew, it's not hydrogen going into helium. This is whatever's on the periodic table before iron is then is producing iron in its core and throwing out iron. This is much denser than our sun, much heavier than our sun. This system is much bigger and much denser than anything our sun has to offer. Our sun is like featherweight to all these big systems. How we could ever assume that our light sun is the center of it all is just ridiculous. It's not looking at the logical play in things. If it's hydrogen, it's light. It's got one proton, one neutron, one electron in every atom. They're not dense atoms. We've got it all the wrong way round. We throw everything upside down. We put everything backwards. We put everything upside down. It's everything we're presented. All your current astronomers are all giving you everything, either on a Copernicus, a 500 year, or they slightly advanced it to a Keplerian perspective, where you see all of these objects orbiting what you're assuming is the sun, and that all these objects are coming in as if coming in from a different way, assuming always that our sun must be static, and these things are all coming into a static sun. Everything's got a different perihelion point that's coming in. The sun is just static in the middle. Everything you're given is being turned upside down, so much so that most of you are not going to be in preparation for what's about to come. And this massive effort right now, as this object is ironically, every time I fed the system into, I asked AI or Gemini to come up with astronomical kind of like simulations of what I was talking about, but it would always try and throw it and make it much more complicated. It would never really listen to what I was saying. It would just try to throw it into a massive realm of complication, always saying, no, you're right, and then throw you these bastardized versions of everything I was putting together, claiming that, oh, it was a bit too complicated for its kind of like its AI visual. And yet we can see what it can do with visuals in terms of what it can produce, and yet it would always bastardize it. And it would always bastardize it. It would always kind of like turn it upside down and make sure that everything that I was offering, even though you could see it, you could clearly understand it, it would always distort it. And so we can't ever be in a situation. So I was talking about going to going to come back to Yanis. This is a bogus channel, by the way, but just to keep his face there, because I don't know, a lot of you probably don't like Yanis, a lot of you probably do like Yanis. I love some of the stuff he says. I don't agree with everything, but he's an intelligent man who speaks a very, very interesting truth. He's just a great speaker. I like him a lot. These videos are, they don't reflect what he's what he's saying at all. They just want you. They want you believing that Europe is Europe are the retards in all this, and that are driving all this. And this isn't being driven by America and the Trump agenda at all. That these are all European stupid decisions, and they're making ridiculous decisions. And I'm of mind that Europe is really desperately trying to hold it together. Do you remember when we had we basically had Europe really not wanting to engage in the Ukraine war, and then do you remember when who's Trump's, is it foreign minister? The president and the vice president, J.D. Vance, turned up in Germany on the night before the elections and gave his big speech saying that Germany's going to end up like Britain if it carries on with this left-wing agenda, and they need to really turn everything upside down. And he managed to get a right-wing government elected in Germany by manipulating the elections the day before, and then everyone just went out and voted for a right-wing government and voted to bring nukes in aimed at Russia, and now we're at this place now where Germany's supplying long-range missiles to Ukraine to try and this is these desperate needs by America and Britain to drive Europe into a massive war to save the US dollar and to save the British pound, because we've invested everything in war. That's what we've done for so long. Well, when I turned up to Extinction Rebellion a couple of years ago, I'd gone along to a big talk in about 2019, and I said a load of volcanoes are going to go off on this specific day, and I said we've got to sort of try and address our understanding of volcanoes because we believe we're going completely the wrong direction, and I spoke to everyone there, and I made sure I spoke to everyone there. That especially all my old friends, and these, I've been an environmental kind of political activist for years and years and years. And then suddenly I start talking about all this stuff and going against the carbon zero agendas, and suddenly I'm like Satan. People are just getting really angry and shooting me down and everything I'm saying, and I'm just getting, my Twitter gets, first of all, my Facebook got shut down in about 2000 when I ran for Mayor of London and Mayor of Bristol. My Facebook page got shut down, and then when I got 16, I was going on about Mars, but I built a Venus flytrap, as in I built the Mayor of London mobile, and I parked it outside of and I was living in a pink living Mayor of London mobile, which was literally said Mayor of London outside, and I knew that if I was out there was going to chance that Boris Johnson would come down, tie his bike up on the rack, and people would see the Mayor of London mobile and snap it. And sure enough, Boris Johnson came down and tied his, padlocked his bike up against the mobile Mayor of London mobile, which had a list of all the women that I wanted to make love to, based on because Tracy Emin had taken a tent and made a list of all the people she'd made love to. And I thought, well, if I recycled a Glastonbury tent and gave a list of all the people I wanted to make love to, it'd be like kind of living in the future rather than kind of like naming and all the rest of it. It would be at least, it's thinking in the future a little bit. But it said the Mayor of London mobile, and it was a bow-top wagon made out of an old Glastonbury tent, blah blah blah. And it was just kind of, it was a fun piss take, and I was going on about the Martians and I was trying to be a little bit insane with releasing a book that was basically telling you that Britain was about to be used as the Trojan horse, and they were going to try and get us out of Europe, and this whole kind of crazy other story. But I knew that I was never going to get. It was, it was. I'm long enough in the tooth to know that it's very difficult to get stuff out there, and that we've got to find alternative means, and we've got to kind of like. Anyway, they wanted to get me off, and they were like, "Right, you can't stay here," and I was just like, "Well, I'm going." And the security were like, "You've got to go," and I was like, "Well, I'm going." And they were like, "Well, you got to go now," and I was like, "I'm going now." And they were like, "Well, you look like you're going," and I was like, "Well, I'm going, aren't I? Because you told me I've got to leave, so your work is done now. You can hear it from me. It's official. I'm going." And I was there for I was going for quite a few weeks, and they couldn't do a lot about it really, I suppose. And then Boris turned up, sure enough, on his bike, and my Twitter page got 16 million hits on Twitter, and of course they shut down my Twitter straight away. And and then I kind of like, and then I started using YouTube, and when I came out for the big flyby on the, after the big flyby on the 20th of January 2017, it was a sensational shot. It was massive. It was, it was a massive shot. I was a kind of bit of a YouTube sensation in England. Obviously, I was a madman. No one wanted anything to do with it, and all the carbon zero kind of agenda. All my mates were just fully carbon zero. They were just, that was their environmental stance, and I was going against that. I was like the devil on I don't know, but it was just like I was bad. I was evil. I was up there with Satan, and then everyone else has started seeing it, and it started to break apart, and so I just had to kind of push the whole kind of make you think about I was presenting the kind of like I was presenting carbon dioxide as we see it on Mars, and the zircon, and what formed the zircon on Mars, and how we can see the whole carbon dioxide of how our planet's gone through a whole carbon cycle, and what that means, not just by plants breathing in oxygen, or breathing in carbon dioxide and breathing out oxygen. I was showing you the carbon cycle on a geological level that we kind of don't see, about how carbon dioxide digests rock and turns rock into the food that we can eat. If you just added water to a planet, it would just be water, and there would just be rock. You add carbon dioxide to the water, and you turn the water into carbonic acid. Then you break down the rock, and then you've got the building blocks for life itself. Without carbon dioxide entering in the water, you can't have life itself. You can't have the building blocks that create life. And I was kind of trying to show that whole process through that whole story, and through a wacky, we're all being invaded by Martian story and the whole thing, just to be a bit wacky. And when people laugh, I'd laugh with them. And when they be serious, I could take them through a serious sort of thing. But anyway, they shut down my channel, and everything I've pretty much done. I just saw recently, the BitChute got shut down, and it's everything we're doing. And now we're seeing, obviously, TikTok. Trump's just saved TikTok. Can't make him up. Anyway, I went along to Extinction Rebellion again. I went along, I have to say that, it didn't go down very well in 2019, but nonetheless, I said a load of volcanoes would go off, and 9 volcanoes went off simultaneously. Remembering, I know I keep going on about it, but our local volcanoes, Etna, Stromboli, small volcanoes that only produce about 80 million tons of carbon dioxide on a single eruption, which is why they're small volcanoes. Not like Chevaluch and Popocatépetl and Taal volcano. These big volcanoes are like 200 or 300 million tons of carbon dioxide on a single eruption that we're not allowed to consider when we're talking about carbon dioxide, because they don't include any natural emissions of carbon dioxide. And so I went along, and I decided to have another go, and I did a talk. I went to do a talk at Extinction Rebellion, and this person, I'm going to call them a person, that was running it, met me, and they were wearing a skirt, and I had a beard. And so I've got to call them a them, as in I've got to pluralise their name. I will remain a me in my most singular form, but they will be a them in their most plural form. And they said, what are you going to talk about? And I said, well, I'm going to talk about carbon dioxide. And they said, we. They didn't refer to anyone else. They just referred to themselves as a we. And I obviously refer to them as a they and a them. And they said, we don't want you to talk. And I said to them, the singular them, I remember, I'm not against, I love transvestites. One of the best books I've ever read was I remember my mate gave me that copy of that book. Is it last stop to Brooklyn? Oh, it's just the most phenomenal reading. And it's changed the universe. That book, it just changed the universe. It just you know, that it's like a transvestite, you know, in the kind of like, and probably in the 19, I'm not too sure when it's set. It could be the late 19th century, it could be the early 20th century, I'm not too sure. But but a transvestite that kind of like that when he leaves his house in kind of uptown New York, he's kind of like, and then he makes his way to the Bronx where they put on a dress, and the only people who accept them are the mafia and the kind of like the crime cartels that they operate on in the docks in the Bronx, and they're really harsh, and he writes it in the most crude way. Excuse me, I've got such a bad chest at the moment, I've got fighting a bit of a cold. But it captures this incredible environment of this human being, this unbelievably sophisticated, emotional, complex human being. And I'm sure that book opened up a way to liberate America. I know some of the most amazing gay people, transvestites, and that sort of stuff. I'm not having a bash at anyone who wants to do whatever you like, but so it's not really relevant, except that the whole thing has just become this. This is what Yanis talks about, how the left wing movement has been used as a means to propagate some really, really bad ideas and some really crazy ideas, which has turned a lot of things upside down, that have enabled the likes of Trump to become really powerful, to enable the far right to get a footing like we could never believe, because the left wing has been so bastardized. But anyway, I wasn't angry or anything else like that. It was just a situation. It just seemed so weird that they said to me, "We don't want you, and we don't want to hear what you've got to say." And I said, "But you understand that if I speak about carbon dioxide and you don't like it, I'm going to be standing there, and you can tear a strip off me. You can put me in my place, and we can have a debate. And you can be there with your science and what you've got to say, and I can be there with what I've got to say, and we can have a heated debate, and in that heated debate we can all move things forward, and we can all, you can tear a new hole out of me if you like, you know what I mean, whatever it takes, kind of like to put me in my place, but it's going to be a public debate, and we're all going to have a bit, and there's environmentalists and everything else like that. But of course the reality is they said that we don't want you to speak about carbon dioxide because we are terrified about what you might say. So they said, we're going to cut you out, and we're going to get this woman to come and speak, and she's going to come and talk about carbon dioxide. She went and spoke at Extinction Rebellion in my place because they didn't want me to speak. And every time she asked me to hold her phone to film her, and she was a lovely lady. This is no criticism against her at all, because I guarantee you that if she dropped the carbon zero narrative, everything else that she said would have been still valid. But I need to be more environmental, more ecological with our choices, more kind of like more aware. None of that would have fallen short of validity in her plight. But every time she said carbon emissions, she didn't say carbon emissions. She said carbon omissions. And I filmed it, and I just thought, oh my God, that's so Freudian. So after her speech, and it was an amazing little speech. Obviously, nobody was there to listen to her because everybody is over the whole carbon dioxide, Extinction Rebellion nonsense, because it is just, everyone is now seeing through it, that you just have this ridiculous thing where this woman is just talking about carbon omissions, and of course to omit information is now the greatest crime that had been committed by the media. Not to distort information, but to omit information. And that is when we're talking about our carbon omissions, not our carbon emissions. And so I said to her, I said, listen, can we go and have a little talk? And I'm going to buy you a cup of chai, and I'm going to talk about your talk. And she said, yeah, I'd love to. And I told her about the volcanoes and about the massive releases of carbon dioxide from volcanoes and how we don't introduce that, how we're building nuclear power stations on tsunami hotspots like Fukushima. And people say, oh yeah, but Fukushima's not that bad, it hasn't really affected that much and that sort of stuff. I tell you what, you don't buy all the sea life and the seaweed and that sort of stuff from Japan anymore. It all comes from Wales. A lot of the seaweed that goes to Japan is coming from Wales now because they don't want to eat that stuff even from their local environment because of the radiation poisoning. Even though the greenwashing says, oh no, it's fine, oh no, it's all right. The seaweed industry in Wales is booming because of Fukushima. Even though we can say, oh yeah, but it's fine, it's not fine. Nuclear power stations going into meltdown, building nuclear power stations on tsunami hotspots like here in Hinkley Point is not fine. It's greenwashing nonsense. This channel, okay, won't go out to anyone. Okay, I'm wasting my time. And the last little bit of what I'm going to talk about here is the agenda, as in not their agenda, but my agenda. Because we all have an agenda. And I do remember when I got to Extinction Rebellion, when I got to Occupy, because you know I did my little Venus flytrap, you know, outside the Guardian in the name of Occupy Mayor of London when the Occupy thing was going on, and I was occupying Mayor of London, saying what a ridiculous thing it was to give all this power over to one person. But anyway, so we had this little chat, and I said to her, I said, you know, I said, I'm not criticising you because everything you said is valid, but when you talk about carbon emissions, I said that's the most valid thing you said in all of your speech. It's because that's the greatest thing that we've got to look at, not what we're emitting in this massive story. And she I can remember the moment she went, carbon emissions, to omit. And then she just thought about it, and she was just like, oh God. And obviously she wanted to correct that, but I said, listen, no, you're speaking more truth than you realise. You're speaking truth to yourself. That's your highest self speaking to you, desperately trying to speak to you in the nicest possible way to correct you, so you can understand. Because she said, oh yeah, but all that plasma energy, everything is no hope, it's not real. And I said, you say that, here we are sitting under a beautiful sunny day, there's the sun, beautiful, radiant, clean, abundant fusion energy radiating down on us, telling me that is not possible, that is not conceivable, that is not feasible, that we cannot have abundant, clean energy agenda going on, that we cannot have that on our temple, that we can only be linked up to the nuclear carbon zero agenda, that we want to sweep that away. I said, how much of your agenda would fail? How much of what you would be pushing forward would fall apart if you if you believed in abundant clean energy instead of carbon zero agendas and building nuclear power stations on tsunami hotspots and giving power over to the likes of Trump and all the rest of these right-wingers that have basically, you know, all of these agendas have come in, all these greenwashing agendas have come in, and they've hijacked so much of the left wing and taken it into religious belief systems, you know, that which is where we are today, which is why it's enabled the whole Trump agenda and the right-wing agenda to flourish in the way it is flourishing right now. But we had to get to this point. We had to come to this point to see this for ourselves and to go on this incredible journey to see now the greatest crime of media is the stealing of people's identity and producing this nonsense. And like I say, I've got a lot of time for Yanis Varoufakis, sorry. Ironically, Varoufakis, fake. can't make it up in a month of Sundays. I saw that in the last moment. Anyway, my agenda. I've realised it, you know, because obviously it's over for this channel, my channel. You know, this guy's getting this. Whoever this is high level. This is the highest level. Using YouTube as a propaganda machine to feed Europe into a massive war against Russia, to get Europe absolutely covered in depleted uranium, to make sure the entire market garden of Europe is covered in depleted uranium in a massive war, to make sure that the American vegetable and fruit and vegetables are the only things that are coming into Europe, because everything else is polluted. And that America is made great again by the massive war that they so desperately want. Which brings you back to, you know, France, so Elizabeth I, in the time when 1588, when the ships were coming in, and Britain was being drawn into this massive war, and it had to pick up the guns, and yet Sir Francis Drake is playing bowls. He picks up his bowls and he's there, and everyone's just like, what do you think? Do you think I can do it? And everyone's looking at the fleet thinking, it's coming in. And it was like, it's just like, do you think I can get the? Do you think I can get the ball? Do you think I'm hitting it at the right angle here? Do you think I'm getting it through the little whatever you had to get the ball through in the little crickety, like whatever the bat is that you use in bowls? You know what I mean? Just like, oh, do you think I can get the shot? And they're all looking at the fleet, and he's looking at the ball saying, it's a bit of a tight shot, isn't it? Do you think I can do that? And everyone's just like, they just thought he's mad. He'd lost the plot. He's completely insane. Why aren't you engaging the troops? Why aren't you engaging the army? Why aren't we kind of taking out the fleet? And he's just like, difficult shot, that one, isn't it? Very tricky. Very tricky. What do you think? The go-around's going to the left or the right there? Just trying to work it out whether the ball's going to go through. It's just like, oh, tricky, tricky. Crazy times. We're in the exact same time. Trump's desperately trying to get the world to rise up in war, doing what the Catholics were doing in the last time round. Good luck through this time. You know, I talk about my agenda. My agenda has always been just to bring you back to this. To go on and on. My agenda is that of the daffodils, to keep pushing through the same point and just keep hoping that this message just has got out there, even though they might shut my channel down to the absolute minimum. I just keep doing it, 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 keep pushing against that whole thing, keep trying, even though right now I've got no money in the account, so more broke than I've ever been, missed all my last repayments, pointless asking for money because I know it's not going to, that's not going to happen. There is a donation link on the
over here.
Sorry. There is a donation link on my on my
to the
channel.
left. He didn't.
I can't make that go down now, I'm afraid. Sorry. There is a donation link on the top of my on my channel there. I'm really, honestly, I'm not meaning to insult anyone, but somewhere along there, it's PayPal thingy there. There's a PayPal button there. It's kind of pointless, really, because so few people can ever do it. And I know that if anyone I thank gets serious trouble, they can track that. They track my thanks to you. So listen, I say thanks in this way for anyone who thanks, but there's so few, I can count on one hand how many people I've never sold a book for all the promotion. You know, Amazon just nick everyone's books. They're plagiarizing everything. They're plagiarizing everything we do. We do it all for nothing. All of it. All of these people that are producing, I guarantee Evolutionary Energy Art, they'll be lucky to make $10 for every video they make. They do it for the love. All of us do it for the love. Even though I've got no money at the moment, I'm more brassic than I've ever been. The chances of any of you out there actually really helping me are, there's a few of you have helped me out there. You know, like I say, I could count on one hand. And so for those of you who have, you know, honestly, if you get a direct letter from me corresponding to say thank you, you've helped me, it's going to be trouble for you. You know, I'm going to tell you one last story, which is I was walking up a street in Brighton. I was going to try and find some colloidal silver, and I had this incredible toothache. I felt like my channel had been utterly destroyed after 2017. You know, it was you know, it went from massive to nothing, and even though the subscribers went up, I was getting attacked in every way, and they'd already destroyed my truck, blown my truck up with all my Bitcoin in it and everything, all the passcodes, everything they destroyed. And I just knew that I was obviously saying something, and I knew I had to just carry on regardless, just keep making the videos, keep saying it, keep doing my side of the equation. If some people help me, some people will, most won't. Many of you, some of you can see this and you'll make videos with it, you'll kind of do whatever you do, you'll follow whatever you follow. You know, those of you can have to make videos and not really give any real content because you know your video is going to shut down, you want to keep the money coming in. I get it, I get it, you're all stuck between rock and a hard place. You know, but I can't make it. My videos, all of my channels being demonetized. I couldn't even put an ad on these channels. You know what I mean? If I said the wrong thing, I would, you know, I would just get the channel shut down anyway. So we're just like, so it's not going to get out there. But for the few it does, know that if I write you a direct correspondence saying thank you that you've helped me, it's bad for you. It'll come for you. And I was walking along, I had this bad toothache anyway, and this woman said like, I said, do you know where I can get any colloidal silver around here? And she just turned around, she looked at me, and she said, you're going in the wrong direction. You've got to go to, you know, this shop in the centre of town. And I was like, I knew I was going in the wrong direction. I just carried on walking. I'm just dizzy. I've got such bad, my whole face was up on the side. I didn't have enough money for the dentist. So I was just trying to find other ways of dealing with it and that sort of stuff. And with colloidal silver and hydrogen peroxide and I just turned around and then she just turned around and she goes, she was just sitting, I was just passing some cafe. She was just sitting in some cafe on her own having a coffee. And as I turned around, she just looked up and she said, what do you reckon's behind that cloud up there? And I looked up with this cloud and I said, I don't know. I said, what do you reckon's behind that cloud up there? And she said, I reckon that planet of yours. And I said, what are you? I said, you're an English. You're a subscriber and you live in England. I said, I didn't think I had any subscribers that live in England. And she said, oh, a lot of people watch your channel, but they just can't subscribe because they get attacked. Anyone who's seen to help you or get attacked or does anything towards you gets attacked. You've got to do it kind of really. So I don't publicly. I limit my communication to people in so many ways because I know how bad it is for them. But they get attacked, and I pray that my work can influence their content creation, that they might have the balls to speak their truth, and that they might have the courage to talk about these planets in their own way, through their own take of it, and might get a grasp of what they're really up against, because I know that we are not ourselves at the moment. We're our egos reliving in ourselves, and they've been given their chance to redo everything that we once did. And so nothing's evil in this thing. It's just different agendas coming through humanity at the moment, living out the story that we once lived on this planet in a different way, through a different lens. But we're all coming back to the rich, creamy now. And I hope if my work has influenced you in any which way, if there's been any value to you, there's a donation button there. You know, it's like I say, I could count on pretty much one hand how many people have helped me in maybe two hands, but closer to one hand, how many people have helped me overall. And I know it's pissing against the wind, really. And now, now it's all been shut down. Now YouTube is just it's a weapon to feed Europe into a war against Russia. Not a lot more than that, really. It's just a big propaganda machine. And breaks my heart. It's our only hope right now is to sort it all out for us, is that thing, really. And so I was told that in my first ever message before I left home, before I left home. I left home. My dad said I couldn't leave home until I was 18. I left home on my 18th birthday. And just before I left home, I had a dream, and I was being chased in these tunnels by this indigenous guy. And I couldn't get out, and I saw this opening in these tunnels of mud under the ground. I tried to get out, and I couldn't get out, and he came round through these other networks of tunnels. I was desperately trying to get away from him because he was chasing me. And then just suddenly he appeared opposite me, and he had a dagger in his hand, and he threw his dagger at me, and I blocked it, and it landed in my hand, and I threw it back down on the ground in fear, panic. I didn't want it, and then he picked it up and he threw it at me again, and it landed in my hand, and I picked it up, and I looked at the handle, and I looked at him, and I realised he was giving me this dagger, and I looked at the stone in the handle. It had this made of the colour from the wings of butterflies, a colour I'd never seen. This kind of like this luminous kind of like colour, and I looked at it, and then I woke up in the shock of it, and as I opened my eyes, I just heard the words "cut away." And I realised that I had to cut away from the pain, that I couldn't get out of this realm before because of the pain I hadn't done. I hadn't spoken my truth. I hadn't spoken my truth. And that I'd created this terrible problem that had happened to the planet, that we'd lost the possibility of having a future. When in reality we'd left before the cataclysm had ever happened. We'd left to stop the cataclysm happening, to give ourselves to that which was driving the cataclysm, so we wouldn't become the same as that was driving the cataclysm, and be fed into the next world, and be as that was creating the cataclysm now. We would join and become part of that ongoing cataclysm to break the next world, and that this was the end of this massive line of hate that had been used to break the world-breaking hate that's going from one world to the next. And that I'd wanted to change that, and I needed to cut away from that. At the end of this life, it was time to cut that away, and that's why I cut my hair at this time, to let go of all of that and to offer that up in gratitude to all that I could have done in this time, for the life I could have lived, I would have possibly lived if I hadn't chosen to pursue this. When people say, why would anyone care about these planets? Why don't you just get on? Why don't you make money and do things? Go and get laid. Go and get pissed. Go and be sitting on a beach drinking caipirinhas, getting laid, and just pursuing dollars. Why do this? Why care? Why bother? Who gives a fuck? I give a fuck. So I'm going to put that hair on the fire after this and let that go up. And any help that you might want to give me in this process, please, no expectations. You're not going to get any thanks from me because you don't need that in your life. We'll do the thank yous after this. After all of this, when it's all done and it's all gone by, we'll all do the gratitude and the thanks. And hopefully we'll do the big meeting up for all of those that have helped me a little bit. There'll be a time where we can all meet up. We can all look at this in the past and we can all see what's happened here. And all know that we've played a part. Even just seeing this, it's galactic. It's cosmic beyond comprehension. Just to be able to cast your eyes on the biggest system that you're really in is the greatest, biggest evolutionary step that you will probably take in this single life. Thank you for following me this far if you have. And these are big times. It's all happening now, isn't it? Is Trump going to be able to launch the whole thing into a massive war? You know, who's Trump's controller? Who really controls him? You know, all the big arrests that are going to happen and everything else like that. And then I saw the last release, the massive release, and it's all redacted. It's all in black. Isn't it? It's just hilarious. The whole thing is just hilarious. good luck through these times. Ciao.